Now the embattled Emfuleni municipality's financial woes are worsening after it failed to pay September salaries. This after Eskom attached the bank accounts for over an amount of 8 billion rand that is unpaid to Eskom. Let's speak to the Emfuleni communications manager now, Makosonke Sangweni, who joins us via the virtual platform. Mr. Sangweni, good evening to you and thank you for your time. Are you able to tell us the situation around salaries? Have they been paid, or is there a promise to have them paid soon?
Yeah, good evening to you, Putoli, and your listeners at home. The issue of the salary, I think now it's of a public record that we have not been paid, obviously, for the month of September, for the reasons that we have stated that Eskom has attached our bank accounts.
And so any discussions from, or let's say between the municipality and the minister responsible for the municipalities, that's the Kokta minister, Mr. Velenkosini Hlabisa. And I'm asking you this question because he has just texted me when I guess he became aware that we were going to have this interview with you. And the text message from him simply says that a relief has been reached and by Thursday, workers must get their salaries. Are you aware of this latest development?
No, thank you for that latest information. What I know from yesterday, there's been ongoing discussion with the Minister of Kokta, Minister of Finance, the Premier of the province of Gauteng and Emfuleni delegation, including the Minister of Electricity and Energy. There's been discussions from yesterday night, and as far as I understood, they were still in ongoing discussion even currently. But now that you are giving us that privileged information, then maybe it's clear that we have finally reached agreement. But as far as we understood, the discussions were ongoing, and of course they were going well and looking positive.
Yeah. But what about the debt itself? Do you know what the ultimate solution is, or a possible solution is, to try and sort out that issue?
Look, Butloli, part of the discussion in this matter, it includes a signing of agency agreement, which will finally see us maybe trying to reduce the debt, or maybe the debt being reduced. But over and above that, as the municipality, we have given Eskom, our large power users, which is more than 400, 400 companies, if I can, plus minus 400, if I can put it that way. So obviously in our discussion, we want to argue that the amount as it stands is not 8 billion as it stands, because already they've been receiving some part of our money and part of the revenue. But it's a matter that will be aggregated correctly at the conclusion of this meeting, and then probably will release statements as all institutions to clarify and chart a way forward. But we have got every intention to fulfill our commitment in paying the debts, and we have already initiated that, as I've already said, that most of our large power users are already paying directly to Eskom.
Yeah. On the part of workers, at least if indeed the minister is to be believed about the relief and that by Thursday workers should have their monies, at least that's comforting news on your part as workers in this municipality. But what about the people within the municipality? Talk to us about the services on the ground. The last time we visited the question of Emfuleni, people were complaining bitterly that service delivery is compromised. There are no services being delivered.
No, look, we have challenges that we must accept, and we are not denying that we've got challenges, but service delivery, it is happening. And of course, it may not happen optimally, because at the same time, as much as we appreciate that, also our people need to understand that they also need to play their civic role and support the municipality by paying for their revenue. And paying for the services that they receive, because in many instances we've got 52% unemployment, for example, but I can tell you that there are other people and other community members who can qualify, who can afford to pay, but they are not paying. So sometimes we get to have those challenges. But as I speak to you, services are taking place in the ground, but obviously not at the speed as a paying customer maybe in some instances would like. But we are trying to do our best. As I speak to you, you can say I've got electricity, I've got running water, and my waste collection is collected. Of course, not at the rate and the speed that I would appreciate and want as a tax-paying or as a service-paying citizen. But we're doing everything possible, working with the provincial government and national government to make sure that we turn around the situation. And I think we're not far from achieving that objective.
Makosonke Sangweni, thank you very much for your time. Emfuleni, Communications Manager. All right, listening to that conversation on Emfuleni and this municipality's financial woes is Mr. Jongizizwe Dlabati. He is with the Gauteng Salga. Mr. Dlabati, good evening to you and thank you for your time. Does that give you hope, what has been communicated to myself ahead of the interview with the person I've just spoken to, Makosonke Sangweni, and that communication from the minister is that by Thursday, workers should have their monies. Are you, as Salga, aware of those developments?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity. I can confirm that as Salga, we participated yesterday night into an agent meeting that was convened by the minister, including the Minister of Finance as well as the Minister of Energy, who has since taken the responsibility to oversee ESCOM. And really, out of that meeting, we had positive discussions in the sense that there is hope that this matter will ultimately be resolved. It is not merely about the payment of workers, but it is about ensuring that we do not collapse the municipality from providing, the much needed services. Now, if you attach the account, for instance, the municipality will be constrained even honoring some of its current obligations that are involved in the service delivery value chain. So we are optimistic, and I think if what the minister sent to you is official, it's something that we must really welcome, just as a relief to the current impulse. But there is a need for the municipality to engage in a long-term revenue strategy that will extricate itself from this current dire financial situation, because we might get a relief for this month, but if we don't address the structural and fundamental challenges that have led the municipality to be where it is today, we may not necessarily, improve moving forward.
Yeah, perhaps it is the matter that we've got to get into with you, because these billions that are owed to ESCOM by Emfuleni, they didn't just arise yesterday. It's a long-standing issue. So perhaps put us into the picture as to what these structural issues are that are preventing the municipality from its obligations of settling this debt.
I think one thing we must accept within the local government sector is that firstly, the sector is underfunded. If you look at the national fiscus, almost 9% of the total gets to be allocated to local government. And if you look at the mandate that has been given to local government relative to province as well as national, there is a disjuncture in terms of how the sector is funded. And it's one of the immediate areas that we must address, in a sense that at least a reasonable allocation is made to local government. Secondly, we must also accept that we have, to some extent, allowed the culture of non-payment to become a habit and permeate across our households, to the extent that those who can afford to pay for services, they literally trapped into the non-payment culture. And that could be as a result of our own municipalities not being firm enough to foster that culture of payment, in a manner that where there are deliberate instances of not honoring the municipal account obligation, the credit control gets to be instituted. But thirdly is that appreciating the economic environment, for instance, in Emfuleni, with its high unemployment rate, there is a need for our municipalities across, with no exception to Emfuleni, to begin to do what I term doing beyond the norm, in that we venture into other revenue collection streams, other than collecting from the trade services. And by no means I'm saying that we must not optimally collect from water, sewer, sanitation, and electricity, but we should begin to explore other revenue streams that can increase our revenue base as municipalities. Thirdly is that there must be a strong collaboration with the private sector, in that we get to relieve ourselves from some of the capital projects that requires a whole lot of money, which if we collaborate with private sector, we can actually ease the burden amongst ourselves. But at the center of everything is the issue of governance as it relates to fostering the culture of payment. And I think those are some of the few things, Brakoli, Emfuleni, and the rest of our municipalities in Gauteng should begin to focus on. For if we don't do those, as a matter of agency, the provision of sustainable and quality services, to the extent that we're able to expand, that will be affected. The service will be interrupted, as we are seeing with Emfuleni municipalities. And we've really subjected our communities into an unfair situation as a result of this attachment. But lastly is that when there is an impulse between different spheres and entities of government, we really need to follow a much more cordial approach of IGR, as opposed to putting a gun to one institution or entity which forms part of the broader government. Because yes, whilst Emfuleni may owe ESCOM, but ESCOM is part of government, a government that must ensure that people get electricity, a government must ensure that municipalities are able to honor their current obligations. So that sensitivity, ought to be observed by all the institutions that are linked into a common objective of serving our communities.
Final question to you, sir. Intergovernmental relations, as you put it, IGR, intergovernmental relations aside, it almost is an irony, what I'm about to point out now. Emfuleni and Midvaal are next door neighbors. They are next door neighbors, and I have often wondered, what is it that is special about Midvaal that makes it perform better than Emfuleni? I almost sound like a stuck record. I went to that municipality. It's one of the top 5 performing countrywide, and yet the next door neighbor, Emfuleni, you have a calamity like this one.
Well, Prakoli, without comparing the two, but accepting that there are best practices, I think we must accept that when good governance collapses, you are likely to experience challenges. So there is a need for the leadership of Emfuleni and the rest of our municipalities to be firm on matters of good governance as a starting point. Secondly, there is a need for our political leadership to focus on matters of, financial discipline within our institution, in that we manage the resources in a manner that will keep us to be sustainable. But as I've said, there is a need for our municipalities to look at other revenue streams that will make them to be sustainable over and above the equitable share, the issue that I've just raised, that the funding is simply not sufficient. I guess the distinguishing factor, it will be around the preservation and fostering on good governance, including how the municipality manages its finances. Maybe when we have an opportunity at some point, we must talk about the cost of procuring within all sectors of government, whether as institutions of the state, are we procuring at a reasonable cost against what we are having in our revenue. So those are some of the discussions that we must have. But at the center of all, I can say that a leadership that appreciates and abides and fosters good governance, prudent financial management, budget and expenditure management, that leadership is likely to steer properly an institution, just like we are saying at Midvaal.
You see, I can't fault you with that kind of explanation. Good governance and a solid leadership at the helm of the municipality, which is exactly what I witnessed when I got to Midvaal. You just talk to the municipal manager, you can see that this is a man who means business. We've got to end the conversation there. Hopefully, these are the building blocks that the leadership in Emfuleni are going to start putting in place. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Jongazizwe Dlabati is with the South African Local Government Association in Gauteng.